Sup, fuckers? Welcome to episode 2 of the Zombie Bible. This is the new series in which I'm going to be rating and scoring every single zombies map from the very beginning. In the last episode, we talked about Nacht der Untoten, and today we are going to be taking on and tackling the second ever zombies map, Verrückt. Verrückt was the first ever DLC zombies map ever and introduced a lot of new mechanics to the game. This map introduced a lot of mechanics that would become mainstays in the Zombies series as it went on. It introduced, of course, infamously, the perkacolas, Quick Revive, Juggernog, Speed Cola, Double Tap, as well as traps, and the teddy bear in the mystery box, so that the mystery box would not stay in one spot. Fuck you for that, Treyarch. First off, we're going to be jumping right into the atmosphere. I love the atmosphere of this map. This map takes place in an abandoned, decaying, and decrepit psych ward, which is fucking awesome and is hella fucking creepy, especially given the fact that they added a lot of little nuances and ambient things in this map. For one, you have the dentist chair on Jug side of spawn and the little morgue cremation cubby on the Quick Revive side of spawn that you can interact with and hear the screams and anguish of the patients of this insane asylum. They also added a lot of ambiance in this map, just as you're playing the map. Little electric noises and creepy noises, stuff that you would hear in like an old school horror movie. They also added some of the screams of the patients of this psych ward. I think they did a really good job in this map. This map is genuinely fucking creepy. The only complaint that I can make is color palette choices, which is kind of a bigger World at War issue anyway. The atmosphere for Verrückt, I am giving a 96. It truly is a great atmosphere. The setting of the map is creepy. The ambiance that they add in this map, the little noises here and there, really does make you feel like you're living out a fucking horror film, and that's awesome. So next we'll be talking about the layout. Now in the last episode I talked about the flow and the pacing first, and then I talked about the layout. However, from this point on I will be talking about the layout first and then the flow and pacing, because I feel like when I talk about the layout first, it makes talking about the flow and the pacing easier without having to backtrack. Now the layout of Verrückt is kind of where this map loses me quite a bit. I am not a huge fan of the layout of this map. Verrückt is essentially just one big circle. There are no intertwining paths or alternate paths to get to the same place like there were in Nacht der Untoten. If you need to get to a certain point of the map, you just gotta walk there, bucko. You gotta go the whole way around. And while I could find that forgivable, it's also the fact that this map has incredibly poor spacing issues as well. This map is very tight. There are a lot of narrow corridors, and while that kind of adds to the creepiness of this map, to be honest, it's also just makes it difficult to survive in this map, because there are a lot of points in this map that you can easily just get blocked off by a singular zombie and get fucked. With the layout of this map and the spacing of this map, it is incredibly difficult to train here. And you do have those perkacolas that give you an extra edge, and while it is possible to train in this map, it is in one of two ways. You're either doing a full map train, or you're training in the Tommy gun room, which is the only trainable area in this map. And even then, that area is still incredibly difficult to train in. It requires a very high level of focus. Even the most minuscule and minute of mistakes and lapses in judgment can fuck you over, and you can go down and get cornered by a zombie and just get piled on and fucked. The third option you have is to camp somewhere, and even then, that is easier with a partner than it is by yourself in this map. The layout makes this map incredibly difficult, and I am not a fan of that, because while I am not one to shit on a map for being difficult, I am about balance and about a challenge being balanced and fair. And in my opinion, Verrückt the challenge that comes from this map is not fair because it's not challenging because of certain aspects or levels of difficulty. It is difficult because of a poor map design. And for that reason, I am giving the layout of Verrückt a 65. You know, Treyarch has been known, especially in the early days of Zombies, to pull multiplayer maps or sections of multiplayer maps or have maps inspired by multiplayer maps and turn those into zombie maps. When it comes to Verrückt, I feel like they pulled that multiplayer map not because of the location, because it was an insane asylum, and not because it was a good map for zombies. When you play this map, it still kind of feels like a multiplayer map, and that's not good. Next, we are talking about the flow and the pacing of this map. And while the layout of this map makes it incredibly difficult, and I am not a fan of it, there is one aspect of praise that I can give the layout, and that is the layout of this map actually really makes the flow and pacing not that bad. This map is very hectic, and because of that, the rounds go by relatively quickly. You just kind of feel like you're in this constant cycle of like killing and running and just fighting for your life. It's not hard to get power on. Power is literally like a couple rooms away. Like I said, either if you're full map training or trying to train in the Tommy gun room, those rounds are probably going by relatively quickly for you because the area is tight in that Tommy gun room, so you're killing those zombies relatively quickly. And if you're full map training, like I said, this map isn't huge, so you're still relatively getting things done decently quickly, and your rounds are kind of going by pretty quickly, which does make for a satisfying experience in that aspect. The flow and pacing, I'm giving an 89. Because of the hectic nature of this map, the flow is actually pretty decent. Next, we're talking about map mechanics. Now, there are only a couple of map mechanics here that I can talk about. First being the traps that were introduced in this map. There are 2 electric traps in this map, one on double tap side, one on speed cola side. Now, personally, I feel like the electric trap on double tap side of the map is a lot more useful and a lot more usable than the speed cola side trap. And that is mainly because if you're full training this map, it's a lot easier to run into the double tap side and activate that trap than it is to go into the speed cola side trap, because when you go into the speed cola side trap, it really feels like you're backtracking every time. Like when you go up the stairs from jug side spawn to where double tap is, you can activate the trap right there. Or if you're going from the opposite side and you're coming from the STG room, the door's right there. You activate it right there. When you're going up those stairs from the Tommy gun room to where the trench gun is and the bar is, you don't want to go, you get to the top of the stairs, you don't want to go this way. You want to go around and towards speed cola. And even if you're coming from speed cola in that area to the stairs down to the Tommy gun room, you just want to get down those stairs because that area of the map is already very narrow and tight. There isn't a lot of room for error in that area. Another reason that I don't like using the speed cola side trap is because there are 2 barricades on the other side of that trap that zombies can still come from, compared to on the double tap side where there's only 1 barricade. And in a map like Verrückt, you need a break every now and again. Like I said, this map is hectic. The pacing of this map is fast. The rounds are going by quick. And you need a break every now and again. And the double tap side trap gives you that much needed break because there's only 1 barricade. You don't have to defend yourself as hard as the speed cola side. And like I said, the speed cola side one just kind of feels out of the way. The second aspect of this map mechanic that is in this map is the separation of the players at spawn on either sides, the quick revive side and the juggernog side. Now this is only if you are playing with 3 or 4 players, but I feel like it really adds a decent unique experience to this map, because it introduces from the beginning that you are going to be fighting this whole time for your life in this map. From the beginning, it makes it clear that this is not going to be an easy map for you. You're not even going to be able to coordinate with your partners and survive with the people you're playing with. You're kind of separated in these two groups. And I like that. That's an interesting mechanic, and I think off the top of my head, it's the only time where that's ever been done. And I kind of like it. Plus, it really introduces the aspect of the power really well. The third mechanic in this map that I wanted to talk about, and this is like it feels like cherry picking, but there in the Tommy gun room, the only trainable room in this entire map, there are little water driplets that fall from the ceiling, and when you pass underneath these water driplets, it blurs your vision for about a second or two. This really feels like a really big fuck you, because like I said, this is the only room in this map that is trainable, and to have those water driplets literally only be in that room is insulting, because like I said, this area, while trainable, is incredibly difficult. It requires a lot of focus. It requires a lot of thinking to not get yourself cornered by zombies, because there are a lot of areas the zombies are coming from in this room, and it is a very, very tight training spot. Adding that water sucks. It makes an already difficult area to train in even more difficult than it needs to be. I'm giving the map mechanics here a 73 because I feel like everything here is average. None of these map mechanics are really make or break for the map for me. At the end of the day, the traps are, like I said, the double tap side one is useful, but at the end of the day, they are not make or break. You don't need to use them. The spawn separation point is an interesting concept that I do like, that adds to the vibe of this map, and I hate those water driplets. So I feel like a 73 is just a combination of all those things. Next time we'll talk about boss zombies, but they don't exist yet, so nothing to talk about. Next, we're talking about the wonder weapon. Now, the wonder weapon of Verrückt is the ray gun. And really quick, just to make a quick detour, since I'm sure people might ask me, no, I am not taking into consideration the Winter's Howl in the Black Ops 1 version of this map, or the Wonder Waff in the Black Ops 3 version of this map. I am really only talking about what was introduced in World at War. There may be certain things in the other iterations of this map, or the World at War maps, that I might take into consideration in the future. For example, if from the Black Ops 1 version of Verrückt to the Black Ops 3 version, the graphics got an upgrade and the atmosphere got an upgrade, that will be something that I take into account. But in terms of wonder weapons, the Winter's Howl and Wonder Waff were added in those versions to make this map easier, and they're not a part of this map. Does that make sense? That these weapons were introduced later. They were not an original aspect of this map. I will only be talking about original aspects of these World at War maps, and not stuff that was just added to it. So like I said, if the graphics get an upgrade, the atmosphere gets an upgrade, that was already something that was a part of that map that just got a BBL, For wonder weapons, those things are added just to make these maps a little easier, and that's not something that was a part of the map originally, so I'm not going to talk about that. So again, we got the ray gun. Now, I already talked about the ray gun in Nocturne Toten, and I gave the ray gun in that map a 90 because, like I said, the ray gun is not the greatest wonder weapon of all time. However, it is extremely useful in Nocturne Toten, and it is the same case here. And actually, as a matter of fact, the ray gun, in my opinion, is even more useful in Verrückt than it was in Nocturne Toten because of the spacing issues in this map. Because of the very narrow areas, the ray gun can get you out of a pickle very fucking quickly. And for that reason, I am going to give it a bit of a point boost here and bump it up to 92. Because I think that the ray gun in Verrückt, it really makes it a whole different experience. Having the ray gun in this map is a goddamn blessing. So moving on to our next category, we have replay value. How much replay value does Verrückt have, in my opinion? Now, for me, Verrückt kind of sits in the same boat as Nocturne Toten. This is not a map I'm playing very often because there are a lot of things about this map that there's not much to do here except fight for your life. Same thing as Nocturne Toten. Now, I will say that I will play Verrückt over Nocturne Toten mainly because it has those perkacolas. If Verrückt did not have perkacolas, I'd rather play Nocturne Toten. And if you give Nocturne Toten perkacolas, I'd rather play Nocturne Toten over Verrückt because Verrückt is fucking hard because of its poor map layout. But regardless, there are certain things of Verrückt that are going to keep me coming back more than Nocturne Toten. Things like the perkacolas and honestly the atmosphere. The atmosphere of this map will keep me coming back because it's a creepy map. It's a very unique feeling and I really like that. So by default, I do feel like I have to give it a higher replay value than I gave Nocturne Toten, and I am going to be giving the replay value of Verrückt a 77 because this map is difficult, and there are a couple of things that make the replay value higher here for me. One is the perkacolas. Two is the fact that this map has a better flow and pacing. This map is a lot easier to jump into and just play. Like it doesn't have those really slow beginning rounds. The rounds will evolve really quickly here, and it does make it an easy, if you're just in the mood to play a non-serious kind of quick game of zombies, it is very easy to hop in Verrückt and do a 10 to 15 rounder, maybe even 20 rounder if you're feeling frisky, if you can survive that long. And for that, the replay value is much higher for me. Now, lastly, we have the overall fun and enjoyment of this map. How fun overall, how much do I enjoy Verrückt? Now, in the same breath as I was talking about Nocturne Toten, I do enjoy this map more than Nocturne Toten. Like I said, because of the atmosphere, because of the faster pacing, and again, this map is very similar to Noct in a lot of ways, and in the same way, if you are playing with multiple people, this map is a lot more fun because of how hectic it gets and how crazy it gets, especially if you try to camp and just stand your ground. With a partner, that's really fun in this map and is a really enjoyable aspect of this map. I am giving the fun and enjoyment a 79 because I don't necessarily... The only thing I hate about this map, again, is the layout, and I feel like it's not fair for the everything that this map offers to suffer just because of that bad layout. So after everything is said and done, after adding up the scores and averaging the scores that this map got, Verrückt earned an overall score of 81.6, which is a B-. Now, this map is very similar in score to Nocturne Toten, and falls underneath Nocturne Toten, ironically, considering the fact that I would rather play Verrückt over Nocturne Toten. But it's like I said, it's that layout that really, the layout of this map really sucks and makes this map more difficult than it needs to really be. Overall, I think Verrückt is a really cool map. I think that the atmosphere is really what's going to keep you coming back. Or if you, again, this is a challenge. If you want a challenge, you go back and play Verrückt. Or if you're doing a zombies marathon where you're going from the first map all the way to the, present day, and you play them all in a row. That would really be the only reasons for, I feel like, for me, for going back into this map. And I relatively enjoyed it. I relatively enjoy this map, and I think that, like I said, Verrückt is, I have to give it the respect it deserves because it did introduce a lot of things that are mainstays in the game to this day. The perkacolas, the traps, and I forgot to mention earlier, it introduced characters with voice acting lines for the very first time, giving the characters, just adding a little something that they would obviously much expand upon in the future. But yeah, I feel like a B- is fair for Verrückt. I feel like you can't really ask for much more. So I hope you enjoyed the second episode of the Zombie Bible, and obviously in the next episode we will be talking about Shinonuma. That'll be an interesting one, so stay tuned for that, and I will see y'all in the next one. Deuces.